Maya Tellez had been with the firm long enough to know that when Desmond Osi walked into a room, the room changed. Not loudly, not the way a man who needed the room to know it changed, but quietly, the way pressure changes before a storm, when the air goes still and you realize it was never still before. She had watched him in 3 depositions, 2 hearings, and 1 mediation that lasted 11 hours and ended with the opposing counsel asking, very softly, what Desmond's client was willing to accept. He had been the same in all of them. Unhurried, precise, a voice that never rose above conversational. She had never seen him flustered, so she was already through the Halcott Club's front door, waved in with a nod by the man at the brass lectern. When she turned and realized Desmond was not behind her, he was still on the top step. The man at the lectern, a trim figure in a dark blazer, a laminated badge reading W. Price, Member Services, had positioned himself almost imperceptibly between Desmond and the door. Not blocking, not touching, just there, in a way that made the path less a path than a question. I'm going to need to see some identification, Price said. His voice had the careful neutrality of someone who had rehearsed it. And if you're here for a delivery, the service entrance is around the left side of the building. It's clearly marked. The afternoon was cool and bright. A taxi moved past on the street. Inside the Halcott Club's vestibule, through the glass, Maya could see the marble floor, the floral arrangement, posted directory of dining rooms. She could see, at the far end, the carved wooden doors of the Pemberton room, where a long table waited, and where Harlan Beckett, their client, the man whose company's $47 million arbitration case they had spent 14 months building, was, at this moment, sitting with a glass of water, checking his watch. She stood in the vestibule and did not move. Desmond's hands were at his sides. He was in his good charcoal suit, the one with the pale blue pocket square, his briefcase in his left hand. He looked at Price with the same expression he used when opposing counsel. Said something technically true but strategically wrong. A kind of patient attention, as if he were giving the other person one more moment to reconsider. My name is Desmond Osi, he said. I'm a partner at Callaway Whitmore, and I'm here to meet a member. My name should be on the guest list. Price's expression did not change. Guest lists are verified at the members' table, not at the door. I'm going to ask you again about identification. I've given you my name. Desmond's voice was exactly where it always was. What is the club's procedure for verifying a guest's name at the door? Is there a written policy? A small pause. Price's eyes went very briefly to Maya in the vestibule. She saw it, and then back to Desmond. The policy is at my discretion, and the service entrance is available to. I'll use the front entrance, Desmond said. Thank you. He did not move toward the door. He stood where he was, on the top step, in plain view of the street and of the glass front of the building, and he set his briefcase down at his feet and took out his phone. Price watched him. Neither of them spoke. Maya came back through the door. She had not planned it. She had thought about it for approximately 4 seconds. The arithmetic of a junior associate, calculations of her person who still needed things from people like Price. And then she had stopped thinking about it and walked back through the door and stood on the step beside Desmond Osi. She was not sure she had made the right decision. She was sure she had made a decision. Just looked at her. Ma'am, you were already cleared. I'll wait out here, Maya said. Desmond glanced at her, not surprised, particularly warm, just noting it, and then looked back at his phone. He found the contact he wanted. He pressed call. He held the phone to his ear. It rang twice. Harlan, Desmond said. It's Desmond, I'm outside. There seems to be a question about whether I'm on the guest list. He listened. I did, yes. Front steps. He listened again, and a very small something moved across his face. Not anger, not satisfaction, closer to the expression of a man who had asked a question and received the answer he already knew was coming. Thank you. He ended the call and returned the phone to his pocket. Somebody will be out, he said, to no one in particular. Price had heard enough of the call to understand something had shifted. He straightened. I'm sure we can resolve this at the desk inside. I'll wait here, Desmond said. He picked up his briefcase and stood. Maya stood beside him. The afternoon went on around them. A couple passed on the sidewalk below. A doorman across the street lifted his cap to someone. A delivery truck idled at the corner and then pulled away. Inside the Halcott Club, the marble floor gleamed, and the floral arrangement sat in its brass urn, and the carved wooden doors of the Pemberton room waited. And a man named Harlan Beckett was at this moment no longer checking his watch. He was, Maya would later understand, already reaching for his phone. 4 minutes and some seconds later, the front door of the Halcott Club opened from the inside. The man who came through it was older, heavier, with the careful posture of someone who had spent decades in rooms where posture mattered. His name was Raymond Chass, and he was the club's board chairman, and he was also, Maya would learn later, the man who had proposed Harlan Beckett for membership 17 years ago. He looked at Desmond Osei and then at Warren Price, and he did not look confused. "Mr. Osei," he said. He put out his hand. Desmond shook it. "Mr. Chass, I apologize for keeping you." Chass turned to Price. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. "Mr. Price is Mr. Osei's name in the day's guest registry." A long beat. "I hadn't checked." "Check it now, please." Price lifted the clipboard from the lectern. His eyes moved down the page. They stopped. "He's listed," Price said. His voice had gone careful and small. "Under the Beckett party, primary guest." Chass looked at him for a moment, not unkindly, and not with any warmth, but with the measured steadiness of a man deciding how to name something precisely. "Mr. Price," he said, "the guest at your door was the lead attorney on the most significant piece of client business this club has hosted in 2 years. Been standing in plain view of the street because his name was on a clipboard 18 inches from your hand. That will not happen again at this entrance." He paused. "Thank you," he said. Then he turned to Desmond and Maya and opened the door wide. The vestibule smelled of cut flour and old wood. The marble was very white under the afternoon light coming through the clerestory. A young woman at the front desk, she could not have been more than a year out of school, looked at Desmond with an expression Maya recognized. She had witnessed the whole thing through the glass and did not know what to do with it, and she was not going to pretend she hadn't. Chass walked them to the Pemberton room himself. At the door, he paused. "Mr. Osei, I'll be speaking with our HR director this afternoon. What happened at our front door today is not acceptable. I'd like to have someone contact your office tomorrow with a formal written apology from the board." Desmond nodded once. "I appreciate that. The guest verification procedure at the front door will be rewritten before the building opens tomorrow morning. Every member's guest will have their name confirmed before any other question is asked." Chass held the door. "Harlan is inside." "Thank you," Desmond said, and walked through. Harlan Beckett was on his feet before they reached the table. He was a compact man in his early 60s, with the permanently tanned look of someone who sailed in his spare time, and he gripped Desmond's hand in both of his and said, simply, "I'm glad you're here." He looked as though he meant it more than the sentence could carry. "Let's get to work," Desmond said. They worked for 3 hours. Maya took notes. Desmond laid out the arbitration strategy in the same unhurried, exact way he laid out everything. Not performing certainty, simply possessing it. And twice Harlan Beckett stopped him to ask a question, and both times Desmond answered it before the question was fully out, and Beckett nodded slowly as though a calculation he'd been running for some time had finally resolved. When it was over and the papers were ordered, and the next steps confirmed, Beckett walked them back through the Pemberton rooms, carved doors, and through the main dining room, and toward the front of the club. Warren Price was not at the front lectern. A different staff member, a woman in her 40s, with a lanyard that said Guest Services Coordinator, stood at the brass lectern instead. She nodded as they passed. Later, Maya would learn that Price had been removed from front door duties by 4:15 that afternoon, pending a formal HR review that had been opened within the hour. That the board had voted by email before dinner, attach a new guest verification clause to the club's membership agreement, and that Harlan Beckett, the following week, had withdrawn his firm from the club's annual fundraising gala and notified the board in a letter that 3 paragraphs long that cited precision of a man who had once been a lawyer himself. Exactly what had happened on those front steps, and exactly what he expected in response. Outside, the late afternoon had gone golden cool. Maya stood on the top step and breathed it in. Desmond stopped beside her to put on his coat. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me stand out there with you." He looked at her, that patient attention, that absence of performance. You made a decision, he said. It's yours. He picked up his briefcase. He went down the steps. He did not look back at the Halcott Club, not with triumph, not with relief. He simply walked, the same unhurried pace, the same upright bearing, the charcoal suit, moving through the late light of a Tuesday afternoon, like a man who had somewhere to be and had never, not once, doubted his right to get there. Maya stood for one more moment on the step where Warren Price had planted himself that morning, and then she went down after him. The door behind her stayed open for a while in the afternoon wind, and then it swung quietly shut.